Good morning. Welcome to the Spiritual Hacking Conference Call. I am your spiritual coach, Avraham Calhoun. Thank you all for joining me this morning. I am very excited about today because our call today is about one of my favorite spiritual tools that has ever been taught to me and that I've studied, which is the tool of restriction. So we're going to be talking all about restriction and what it means in today's call. And in order to kick us off, I wanted to start with just a story about a sage and a property owner. So let's go back thousands and thousands of years ago, and I'm going to tell this story. So there was this sage who was walking the land and stumbled upon this cave that had immense power. It gave him prophetic vision, it elevated his spiritual connection tremendously, and so he started to actively go to this place on a daily basis and begin to pray there and to do spiritual elevation and spiritual work. And it came time, excuse me, I'm going to shut the windows, background noise. So the sage would go there every single day, practice spirituality, meditate, pray, sing songs, because there was such immense, tremendous light coming from this one specific area. Well, he knew that he needed to acquire this piece of land in order to build his town or village that he wanted to establish. But at the time, he didn't have any people with him. So he spent years and years and years walking around the area and talking with people, teaching people, etc. Finally, it came time for him and a group of his people to settle. And so the sage went to the leader of the group that controlled that entire territory of the time. And he said to the group, "Please give me any land in this area that I may establish my settlement with my individuals. Anywhere is fine." And the leader of the people said, "Well, you know, you're such a man of God, you're such a man of honor. Anything you want, we will help you." And then the sage specifically says to the group, "Well, then I'm going to need your help. There's this one specific guy who is among you, and he owns this piece of land that I would like to acquire." And that man steps forward and is like, "What's it to me? Take it." He's like, "Okay, well, let me pay you full price for this piece of land." He's like, "What's it to me? Take the field and the cave. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about paying me." And the sage then says again, "I really appreciate this, but listen, I need to pay full price for this piece of land. So how much is it?" He says, "Here's the price, you take it." So in addition to acquiring the cave in which this sage was praying and doing all of their spiritual practice in, they acquired more land on top of it. Now why? Let's talk about this one individual, the property owner who owned the piece of land. It says in this story that this man was extremely rich. He had a ton of property, he had a ton of things. And this one specific area, he was so quick to give away the cave and the extra piece of land because he had so much, right? He couldn't see the true potential. Whereas the sage knew the power of this land. But what's interesting is the sage, when he discovered the piece of land in the cave, at first, he did not immediately go to the property owner or to the king of the land and ask for it, because at that time, he didn't have a need for it. He didn't have his people. He didn't have his village. So he spent time doing the spiritual work, like prayer, doing meditation, teaching, getting followers, getting people who would want to be a part of the mission that he was trying to start. And he finally had a purpose for the land. So the first lesson that we're learning from this story is, in order to reveal the light, The sage knew that this piece of land had great light, but he knew at the time if he had gone and asked, he might give away to the king or to the property owner the true value of this land. Because remember, they were not seeing the true value of the land at the time because they both had so much in acquirement. So the sage understood that in order to actually reveal light, we have to be working towards a purpose. Further than that, what we see the sage doing is, in that moment when he discovers that cave and how spiritually high this cave is and also this piece of land, he has this immense desire for it. He wants it tremendously, but he doesn't immediately go in for the kill and ask for it. Instead, he plays this really interesting game. He waits until he has a real purpose for it, and then he goes to the king, not to the property owner, and he asks for any piece of land. So he almost asks for something that he doesn't want, right? He restricts his own desire, and he gives space for the king to determine what he should acquire, specifically in the land. And then he knows that obviously he's respectable, so the king is going to answer back, take whatever you want. And then that's how he says, okay, well then please help me with this one individual, the property owner, who owns this really amazing cave and this piece of land that has a lot of spiritual light coming from it. So at that time, what we're seeing here is this sage really restricting their intense desire to receive for the self alone, and instead curbing their own desire so that they're able to actually reveal the light of this land. And then the final piece that we need to understand about this is the sage's emphasis on wanting to pay full price for something. You have to remember that the reason the sage could see how powerful this cave and this land was were because not only of the spiritual work that he was doing, but also the high level of appreciation that he had. So there's this hint, him insisting to pay full price for the land is him basically telling us, in order to reveal light, we have to be willing to do the work to reveal it. So what does this mean for our daily lives? Well, I think I want to summarize it into two main things. What is the work that we're doing on a daily basis to make our workspaces and our lives more peaceful? And the main teaching in the story is really this idea of restricting my intense reactive desire to receive for the self alone, and allow myself to develop a strategy and a deeper appreciation for the work that I'm doing so that I have a purpose to reveal what it is I'm trying to actually obtain and reveal. Sometimes we may have a desire, but we can't actually hold the revelation of light in that moment because we haven't done enough work, both physically and spiritually, to reveal that amount of light. So restriction really is key, and that's what we're talking about today. And I think there are two necessary tools that we can use in our daily lives to practice restriction more frequently in the workspace and at home. So when do we use restriction? Well, we use it in moments like the sage, when we want something extreme, when we want something a lot, but we don't necessarily have a specific purpose to reveal it in that moment. So instead of us reacting on that innate desire without purpose, we give ourselves time to actually work and develop a purpose and a strategy so that we're able to reveal what it is we actually really want in that moment. So we can be like the sage in those aspects. But there's another level of restriction that we need to be practicing on a daily basis. When our anger is heightened, when our fear is heightened, when our anxiety is heightened, especially when we're working on teams and we're collaborating with other people, we might be feeling those emotions for real reasons and for valid reasons, but when we respond and react to those moments, it is only going to breed similar energy. Because when you're using the energy of fear to bring positivity, it's always going to be rooted in that element of that negative emotion. And the same thing goes with anxiety or stress. So what we want to be able to do is when we're in those moments where we're feeling those intense emotions, how do I restrict my behavior that is rooted in those negative emotions so that I'm able to reveal a greater level of positivity for myself and the people around me? So the spiritual tool that helps us with this the best is pause. Really pausing in the moment and asking myself this question. First stating what you're feeling, right? I'm feeling this specific emotion because of X, Y, and Z. Now, what is the best way that I can reveal light? And what is the best way that can help me bring down my emotional reactivity just a little bit so that I'm able to act more in line with positivity? So just by simply saying pause, this is an amazing experience that's happening to me right now because it's giving me this opportunity to expand. Pause. This is an amazing opportunity right now because it is giving me an opportunity to expand my consciousness and to overcome my reactive nature. If we develop that ability, we are going to be able to soar beyond, because we are no longer going to be agents of our own fear, of our own anxiety, and of our own negativity. Instead, we're able to rise above those emotions in intense moments. And then, of course, after the pause, another spiritual tool that really helps us develop restriction is meditation. Really just allowing yourself to sit for 2 to 5 minutes and bringing awareness to your breath and focusing on nothing else but your breath. This is teaching you how to control self. And the more self-control you have, the more ability you have to restrict your selfish desires, the more powerful that you're going to become as a conduit to create positivity in other people's lives. Because what causes negativity in this world is our reactivity. It's when we react and respond negatively to the emotions that we're feeling, rather than trying to find a conductive and productive way to transform them into creating more positivity for ourselves. So, pause. What an incredible opportunity to expand and overcome my ego in this moment. And meditating. These are two spiritual technologies that can help take your ability to restrict your negative behavior, your negative thoughts, whatever they may be, in a more positive way. And I want to finally just end on my own personal story of how restriction has really impacted my life. So, all throughout high school and elementary school and middle school, I was told I had ADHD, that I was a bad student, that I couldn't focus on anything. And there are lots of things that I can say about the school system and the way kids are educated today. But what I also am going to touch on is what I was not learning as a child was self-control, was self-governance. Were these deeper spiritual practices like meditation and growth mindset, for example, that help the individual overcome the feelings of failure, overcome the doubt, overcome the negativity. And so it wasn't until college, right after high school, when I started practicing meditation. And just within the first month of me practicing meditation, I noticed that I was able to, if I was like writing a paper and my mind was getting distracted or getting pulled away, because I was developing that muscle through meditation, I was able to pull myself back on track more because I could catch myself losing focus. Because when I'm in meditation, because the goal of meditation is to focus on my breath and to really just have awareness of my breath, the moment that my mind started to wander, I just calmly pulled myself back to the breath. And in a moment like meditation, where there's not so many high stakes, right? There's not a lot of things that can be lost. So there's less negative emotion and frustration with the self when you do become distracted. Whereas if you're trying to finish a paper, you've got a deadline, and you keep getting distracted, then you also start to get frustrated with the self. And it's harder to develop that skill of self-governance and restriction when you actually really need to practice it. So that's why we exercise. Meditation is essentially helping you exercise that muscle of restriction. And when I started to meditate and when I first learned this tool of pause, what an incredible opportunity for me to overcome my ego. I really actually started to see a transformation in the way that I showed up in my work and also showing up just in my life in general. I felt more calm. I felt more in control of myself, and I felt more confident in myself. My whole life I had been told I was a bad student. I didn't care about school, all of these things. Part of that was a passion, a purpose and value issue, but the other side of it was that I didn't have the discipline, and I needed to develop that discipline over time. And so meditation and this one tool of pause, what an incredible opportunity to overcome my ego, really started to transform the way that I showed up in work. So restrict, restrict, restrict. That is what we want to be doing on a daily basis. Asking myself, how can I restrict my negative ego nature? How can I restrict my emotional reactivity in order to reveal more positivity in this world for myself and for other people? Thank you so much. This was the Spiritual Hacking Conference Call. I'm Avraham Calhoun, your spiritual coach, and see you all soon.